Welcome, friend. I'm so glad you have found your way here to this quiet, sheltered corner of the world. Tonight, we are going to step away from the noise and the rush of the day, and we are going to lower ourselves down very gently toward the waiting earth. Imagine, if you will, that we are settling down together on the floor of an ancient, peaceful forest. The air here is cool and silver, carrying the faint, sweet scent of damp earth and resting pine needles. It feels like a soft, heavy blanket for your senses, pressing away the worries of the outside world. Beneath us, the ground is not hard or unyielding. It is cushioned by a vast, living tapestry that we often walk over without a second thought, a world we call the green carpet. As we settle in, let us adjust our perspective. We aren't looking at the tall, reaching trees right now, nor the distant horizon. Instead, we are shrinking our focus, moving our gaze closer and closer until we are mere inches away from the surface of the soil. We are adopting a micro lens, where a single square inch of ground becomes a sprawling, intricate landscape of valleys and peaks. This is the world of the mosses. In the gentle language of science, these humble beings are known as bryophytes. They are the elders of the land, the quiet emerald keepers of our planet's history. Think of the immense scale of time that has passed while these soft cushions have waited here. Mosses have existed on our home for over 450 million years. They were here long before the first bright flower ever bloomed, and long before the first great forest rose up to touch the clouds. They have watched the world change with a patient, green constancy, surviving through ages of ice and ages of sun. Even though they are plants, they do not live by the rules we usually expect from the green world. They are beautifully simple, yet entirely perfect in their design. Unlike the towering trees far above our heads, mosses lack traditional roots to pull water from deep underground. They have no seeds to scatter in the wind, and they never produce flowers to catch the eye. They exist in a state of pure, uncomplicated being, drawing everything they need from the moisture in the air and the gentle mist that clings to the shadows. They are the masters of the small, the champions of the subtle. As we lie here together on this velvet floor, we are entering a realm where time moves differently. There is no hurry here. There is only the soft, rhythmic pulse of the earth. You are safe, you are held, and we are just beginning our journey into the emerald silence of the forest floor. Take a moment now as we rest here on the edge of the emerald world to make sure your own space is just as inviting as this forest floor. If your pillow needs a slight adjustment, or if your blanket could be pulled just a little closer to your chin, Nico, go ahead and do that now. There is no rush. This is your time to be completely at ease, tucked away from the demands of the waking world. If you find peace here in our velvet laboratory, you are always welcome to join us. A quiet whisper to subscribe is like a soft footprint in the moss, a way to ensure you can always find your way back to this stillness whenever you need to rest. Now, let us synchronize ourselves with the life around us. Imagine the great trees far above, their heavy limbs moving in a slow, rhythmic dance with a breeze we can barely feel down here. As the branches lean slowly to one side, take a deep, slow breath in, feeling the cool air fill you with the gentle scent of the pines. And as they sway back to the other side, let that breath go, slowly and steadily, releasing any lingering tension from your shoulders and your hands. Inhale with the swaying wood and exhale with the settling leaves. We are breathing with the forest now. We are part of its slow, patient heartbeat. Our focus drifts back down, away from the tall shadows and toward the sunny, intricate landscape right at our feet. It is easy to think of moss as just one thing, a simple, uniform green carpet. But the more we look, the more we see the incredible variety of this ancient family. Scientists have identified approximately 12,000 different species of moss, each one a unique expression of resilience and beauty. Some look like tiny translucent ferns, while others resemble miniature pine trees or soft, rounded cushions of velvet. They are the great explorers of the plant world, far more adventurous than they might seem at first glance. You can find these quiet companions on every single continent on our planet. They thrive in the misty dampness of tropical rainforests, and they cling to the weathered stones of high mountain peaks. They even endure in the most silent, frozen corners of the world. Even in the vast, white expanse of Antarctica, where the wind hums across the ice, mosses find a way to tuck themselves into the sheltered cracks of the earth, waiting patiently for a moment of sun. They are everywhere, a soft green thread weaving through the entire story of our world, connecting the coldest poles to the warmest hearts of the jungle. Look closely at the patch right before us. It isn't just a flat surface. It is a miniature mountain range of tiny feathery plumes and rounded emerald domes. Every species has its own architecture, its own way of holding the light and the dew. As we reach out a hand to touch the surface, we begin to understand why this world feels so incredibly supportive and soft. As your fingertips graze the surface, the sensation is one of pure, unhurried comfort. It feels like a living velvet, a fabric woven from the very breath of the damp earth. There is a gentle, rhythmic resistance as you press down, a stringy, cushiony quality that feels remarkably supportive. This is not the unyielding stiffness of a stone or the brittle fragility of a fallen leaf. It is something entirely unique. It is the feeling of 1,000 tiny lives, all bundled together, cradling the moisture of the morning in a soft green embrace. This springiness is one of the moss's most beautiful secrets. You see, moss acts like a natural, living sponge. Even the smallest patch has the incredible ability to absorb and hold on to water, often taking in up to 20 times its own dry weight. When the rains fall or the mist settles, the moss doesn't let the water simply run away into the soil. Instead, it drinks deeply, swelling with life until it is heavy and lush. It stores this precious hydration within its very being, creating a reservoir that sustains not only itself, but the entire micro-world that calls this carpet home. If we were to travel deeper into the heart of the moss, shrinking down until we were small enough to wander through the emerald stalks, we would see that this plushness comes from a delicate cellular dance. Unlike the rigid, woody structures of the tall trees that loom above us, moss cells are more like tiny, flexible balloons. When they are filled with water, they expand, pressing gently against their own cell walls. This internal fullness creates what we call turgor pressure. It is this very pressure that gives the moss its structure and its wonderful bounce. Without a skeleton of wood to hold it up, the moss relies on the simple, quiet strength of water to stand tall and reach for the light. When you press your hand into the moss, you are feeling that internal pressure yielding and then gently pushing back. You are feeling the water within the cells providing a soft, liquid cushion for your touch. It is a masterpiece of fluid engineering, a way of being that is both incredibly soft and remarkably strong. Each cell is a microscopic well, a tiny pearl of hydration that keeps the forest floor cool and peaceful. As you slowly lift your hand, notice how the moss rises back to its original shape, troubled and calm. It does not break under pressure. It simply adjusts, its internal balance flowing back into place. There is a profound lesson in this quiet resilience, a strength that comes from being flexible, from knowing how to hold on to what is essential and how to yield when necessary. This gentle architecture has served the moss well, allowing it to remain unchanged while the rest of the world evolved around it. We are touching a form of life that learned the secret of endurance long before the first great forests even began to dream of touching the sky. To touch this moss is to touch a living bridge, a line of green that stretches back through the mist of time, far beyond the memory of the tallest oak or the oldest mountain. If we were to let our thoughts drift backward past the seasons and the centuries, we would find ourselves in a world that feels strangely quiet, yet deeply familiar. Imagine, for a moment, the Earth as it was nearly 450 million years ago during the Paleozoic era. There are no birds singing in the branches because there are no branches. There are no flowers blooming in the meadows because the meadows have not yet been born. The land is a vast, silent expanse of gray and brown, a landscape of cooling stone and ancient silt. But here, where the water meets the shore, something miraculous is happening. In the shimmering shallows of the ancient seas, green algae have flourished for eons, swaying with the rhythm of the tides. But slowly, with a patience that only nature possesses, these tiny organisms began to reach for the light beyond the water's edge. They were the pioneers, the very first life forms to leave the safety of the ocean and find a home on the dry, sun-warmed earth. These were the ancestors of our moss, the brave green spirits that dared to settle where nothing else could grow. As they moved onto the barren rock, they didn't just survive, they began to build. These ancient mosses possessed a quiet, persistent power. They released gentle acids that softly, atom by atom, began to break down the unyielding stone beneath them. They were the architects of the earth, turning cold rock into the very first dustings of soil. Every forest you have ever walked through, every flower you have ever smelled, owes its life to this humble ancient work. The moss was the gardener that prepared the bed for the rest of the world. In those days, the world was a place of profound peace. Without the large leaves of trees to catch the wind, the air moved in long, low whispers. The only sounds were the lapping of waves and the soft, rhythmic sigh of the breeze over the green-dusted stones. This was a world of micro-landscapes, where the moss was the tallest thing for miles, a soft velvet kingdom spread out under a younger sun. When we look at the moss today, we are seeing that same ancient wisdom. It has stayed low, stayed humble, and stayed true to its original design. It didn't need to change to survive the great shifts of time. It simply waited breathing quietly through the ages, watching the giants rise and fall while it remained nestled safely against the heart of the world. It is a comforting thought, isn't it? To know that this softness has endured for so long, unchanging and serene, while the rest of the world hurried on. We are resting our eyes on a survivor, a witness to the very beginning of life on land. We find ourselves leaning in now, lowering our gaze to match the humble stature of our small green companion. It is a world where height is not a measure of success, and where being close to the earth is a form of quiet wisdom. While the great oaks and towering pines that surround us spent millions of years perfecting complex internal systems, thick woody trunks and intricate networks of veins to pull water toward the clouds, the moss chose a different, softer path. In the world of botany, we often speak of the vascular system, those specialized tissues called xylem and phloem that act like delicate pipes, carrying life-sustaining fluids from the deep roots to the highest leaves. But the moss forgoes these heavy structures. It is non-vascular, a word that sounds technical, but truly means it has found a way to live without the need for internal plumbing. Because it lacks these rigid vessels, the moss does not have the structural support to grow tall. It cannot build a trunk or a branch that defies gravity. Instead, it embraces the contours of the world, following the curve of a stone or the swell of a fallen log with the grace of a liquid. This absence of a vascular system dictates the very rhythm of the moss's life. Without pipes to pump water upward, it relies on the gentle process of diffusion. Imagine a drop of water landing on the edge of a velvet cushion. Slowly, without any force or hurry, the moisture is drawn inward, cell by cell passing from one to the next in a rhythmic, unhurried soak. It is a movement of total patience. The water moves through the moss with the same ease that a soft thought drifts through a resting mind. Every part of the plant is in direct contact with its environment, drinking in the mist and the rain through its very skin. This gentle way of moving water is also what keeps the moss so wonderfully small. Because diffusion can only carry moisture over very short distances, the moss typically limits its height to less than 10 centimeters. It is a boundary of comfort, a natural ceiling that ensures every cell is always close to the source of its life. There is a profound beauty in this limitation. By staying small, the moss avoids the stresses of the wind and the weight of its own body. It finds its fulfillment in the shadows and the stillness of the understory, tucked away in the microclimates where the air is always cool and the light is always soft. As we rest here, we can appreciate the peace that comes from not having to reach, not having to compete for the highest point in the forest. The moss is content to be the green carpet, the soft foundation upon which the rest of the world stands. It reminds us that there is power in being low to the ground, and there is a special kind of resilience in staying simple. In the grand design of the forest, the moss is the master of the small, a specialist in the intimate details of the earth, proving that one does not need to be a giant to be ancient, enduring, and deeply quietly successful. Every millimeter of its height is a testament to a life lived in perfect harmony with the slow, steady pull of the earth. If we were to look beneath this velvet surface, down where the green meets the dark, damp earth or the rough skin of an ancient tree, we would find a series of delicate, hair-like structures. These are not roots in the way we usually think of them. They are called rhizoids. While the mighty oak uses its roots as massive straws to pull water and minerals from deep within the soil, the moss has no such need. Its rhizoids are much simpler, much more focused. They are fine, multicellular filaments that act not as a distributive straw, but as a gentle, steadfast anchor. Imagine the tiny, persistent grip of these filaments. They do not seek to mine the earth, they only seek to hold it. This distinction is beautiful in its simplicity, because the moss drinks through its leaves and its body. Its connection to the ground is purely one of belonging. The rhizoid's primary purpose is attachment. Whether it is clinging to the porous surface of a limestone boulder or the furrowed ridges of a pine's bark, the rhizoid weaves itself into the microtextures of the world. It finds the smallest crevices, the tiniest imperfections, and settles there, creating a bond of total stability. When you rest your hand upon a patch of moss, you can feel that stability. It does not slide or shift. It is woven into the very fabric of the forest floor. There is a profound sense of security in this. The moss is not a traveler, it is a dweller. It chooses its home and holds on with a quiet, unwavering strength. These rhizoids, though they appear as thin as a silken thread, provide all the security the moss needs to weather the soft movements of the forest. They ensure that even in a gentle breeze or under the weight of a falling raindrop, the moss remains exactly where it is meant to be. As we observe this connection, we might feel a similar sense of grounding. Just as the rhizoids anchor the moss to the stone, we can allow ourselves to feel anchored to our own space. There is no need to reach out or pull from our surroundings. We can simply be held by them. The moss teaches us that being firmly attached doesn't require deep, invasive searching. It only requires a gentle, persistent presence. The structure of these rhizoids is fascinating when viewed through our microlens. Unlike the single-celled root hairs of larger plants, the rhizoids of moss are often made of many cells joined end to end. They form long, branching chains that explore the landscape on a microscopic scale. They don't need to be complex because their job is so singular and so honest. They are the quiet hands of the plant reaching out to embrace the substrate. This substrate, the wood, the rock, the soil, becomes a partner in the moss's life. On a piece of bark, the rhizoids might follow the lines of the wood grain, finding a home in the history of the tree itself. On a stone, they find the minerals and the cool shadows, wrapping around microscopic peaks and valleys like a soft, living glove. In this world of the forest floor, nothing is hurried, and every attachment is made with care. The stability provided by the rhizoids allows the moss to focus its energy on the light and the mist of it is a foundation of peace. By securing itself so thoroughly to the world beneath it, the moss creates a safe space for the entire micro-ecosystem that lives within its green folds. It is the anchor for a whole universe of life, a steady presence in an ever-changing woods. We can stay here for a moment, appreciating the quiet strength of these tiny filaments and the way they turn a simple surface into a home. The earth beneath us is steady, the moss is secure, and everything is exactly as it should be. As we look closer still, we see that this stability allows the moss to develop its most delicate features, beginning with the very leaves that drink from the air. Now that we are anchored, let us lift our gaze just a fraction, moving from the dark, cool earth to the vibrant emerald canopy of our miniature world. These are the leaves of the moss, though in the quiet language of botany, they are often called phyllids. In our micro-exploration, these leaves reveal themselves as a wonder of minimalist design. Unlike the heavy, thick leaves of a garden rose or the waxy foliage of a sprawling vine, the leaves of our moss are unimaginably delicate, possessing a grace that comes from their extreme simplicity. Imagine holding a piece of fine silk, so thin it is almost a ghost of a fabric. Most species of moss have leaves that are only a single cell layer thick. Think of that for a moment. A single, solitary layer of life, standing between the inner world of the plant and the vastness of the forest. Because they are so thin, they possess a beautiful stained glass transparency. When a stray beam of sun filters through the high branches of the trees above, it does not merely bounce off the surface of the moss, it passes right through it. This illuminates each tiny cell like a miniature lantern, making the whole forest floor glow with a soft, translucent light. It is a green haze that feels like a warm, visual embrace, a glow that emanates from within the plant itself. This simplicity is the moss's greatest strength and its most peaceful attribute. In larger plants, leaves are protected by a thick, waxy coating called a cuticle, a barrier designed to keep water locked in time. But the moss has no need for such a shield. It chooses to be open, vulnerable, and entirely receptive. Without this waxy layer, the moss leaf is free to interact directly and intimately with the world around it. It does not need to wait for water to travel up through complex veins from distant roots. Instead, it drinks directly from the very air it inhabits. Every time a soft mist rolls through the trees or a single heavy drop of dew settles on the green carpet, the moss leaves absorb that moisture instantly across their entire surface. They are like tiny living sponges, pulling in nourishment from every passing cloud and every breath of humidity. They also take in minerals and nutrients in this same gentle manner, gathering what they need from the wash of rainwater and the minerals dissolved in the mist. There is a profound honesty in this way of living, to have no barriers, to simply open oneself to the environment and receive what is given by the sky. As we watch, we can see the cells working in quiet harmony. They are tiny, orderly rectangles of life, packed with green chlorophyll, catching the softest, most filtered light to create energy. Because they are only one cell thick, every part of the leaf is in direct contact with the source of its life. There is no waste here, no unnecessary complexity. Just a thin, elegant veil of green held up to the sky in a gesture of a constant, quiet welcome. This openness allows the moss to be incredibly sensitive to the world. It feels the humidity change long before we do. It senses the coming rain in the changing weight of the air. In our quiet space here, we can imagine ourselves becoming just as receptive. We can let go of our own barriers, our own protective layers, and simply exist in the coolness of the moment. We are here, like the moss, drinking in the stillness, letting the peace of the forest move through us without any resistance. The transparency of the moss leaf reminds us that there's beauty in being light, in being simple, and in being completely present. We are safe in this openness, resting in the soft green light of the understory, where the simple act of breathing is enough to sustain us. This intimate relationship with the moisture in the air defines the very rhythm of the moss's life, allowing it to move through cycles of rest and wakefulness that are as natural as the weather itself. In this rhythm, there is a beautiful, quiet surrender that scientists call poikilohydra. It is a long, melodic word, but its meaning is quite simple and very peaceful. To be poikilohydric means that the moss does not try to fight the world around it. While we in the taller trees work very hard to keep our internal moisture constant, the moss chooses a different path. It allows its own inner state to match the environment perfectly. When the forest is misty and damp, the moss is full and vibrant. But when the sun warms the air and the moisture begins to drift away, the moss does not struggle. It simply lets go. It allows itself to dry, slippery and gracefully, until its water content is the same as the air around it. There is a profound comfort in this ability to let go of the need for constant maintenance. Imagine for a moment that you could simply pause whenever things became too demanding, stepping out of the flow of time until conditions were exactly right for you to flourish again. This is the moss's greatest gift. As the water evaporates, the moss enters a state of deep, protected rest known as cryptobiosis. The word itself means hidden life, and it is one of the most resilient states in all of nature. In this quiet, golden slumber, the moss's metabolism slows down until it is almost imperceptible. It becomes a tiny, dormant treasure, tucked away in the crevices of the bark or the folds of the earth, waiting with infinite patience. During this time of near total desiccation, the moss may look different. Its vibrant emerald might soften into a dusty olive or a muted bronze. Its tiny leaves might curl inward, hugging the stem to protect their delicate centers. But even in this dry state, it is not gone. It is simply in a state of living suspension. It has mastered the art of the long, slow wait. It does not age in the way we do while it is in this state. It is as if the clock of its life has been gently paused by a kind hand. It can remain this way for weeks, months, or in some cases, even years, enduring the heat of a long summer or the bite of a dry winter without any distress. As we breathe together in this quiet space, we can learn from this stillness. We can imagine our own worries as moisture that occasionally moves away, leaving us in a place of quiet, protected waiting. There is no urgency in the cryptobiosis of the moss. It knows, with a certainty built over 400 million years, that the water will return. It does not worry about the clouds or the sun. It simply exists in its hidden life. Safe and sound, it is a master of the pause, a guardian of the slow rhythm. We can feel that same stillness now, letting our thoughts curl inward like the leaves of the moss, finding safety in the silence and the deep restorative rest of the forest floor. The world continues to turn, but here, in the velvet laboratory of the moss, time is a soft and flexible thing held in a gentle, dry embrace until the next change in the wind brings the promise of a drop of rain, and then the wind changes. A subtle shift in the humidity of the forest, a cooling of the air that carries the scent of distant water. We can imagine the sky above the canopy darkening into a soft, bruised purple, heavy with the promise of a gift. The first drop of rain falls. It is a single, clear sphere, tumbling through the leaves of the towering trees until it strikes the parched bronze surface of our resting moss. The sound is a tiny, muffled thrum, a soft hiss, a relief as the water is instantly drawn into the thirsty fibers. This is the moment of resurrection, a biological miracle that occurs with breathtaking speed. While we might take an hour to fully wake from a deep sleep, the moss returns to life in a matter of seconds. Because it lacks a waxy cuticle, its entire body is like a dry sponge, eager and waiting. When that first drop touches a leaf, the water is pulled into the cells by a force so strong it can be felt in the very structure of the plant. As we watch, the muted olives and dusty browns begin to dissolve. A vibrant electric emerald rushes back into the landscape, spreading like a watercolor wash across the stones and the fallen logs. It is a visual exhale. The tiny curled leaves, which had been hugging the stems for protection, begin to unfurl. They stretch outward, opening like miniature hands to catch the falling rain. This process of rehydration is so efficient that within moments, the moss has regained its full plump shape. The springiness returns to its velvet body, and the velvet laboratory is open for business once more. Inside those microscopic cells, the transition is even more incredible. As the water enters, the metabolic engine of the moss, the part that turns light into life, restarts almost instantly. It is as if a dormant machine was suddenly plugged back into a power source, hummed once, and began to run at full capacity. The moss uses special reparative proteins that it has kept in storage during its long sleep. These tiny guardians move through the cells, quickly mending any small fractures or stresses caused by the drying process, ensuring that the plant is not just wet, but truly healthy. We can feel the rhythm of this awakening in our own breathing. Just as the moss absorbs the rain and finds its strength, we can draw in the cool, damp air of the forest and feel a sense of renewal. There is no struggle in this resurrection. It is a natural, effortless unfolding. Within half an hour of the first rain, the moss is often fully functional, photosynthesizing and breathing as if its long, dry slumber had been nothing more than a passing shadow. It has returned from the edge of stillness, vibrant and pulsing with life, ready to host the hidden world that depends on its emerald embrace. The forest floor is no longer a place of waiting. It is a lush, damp sanctuary, shimmering with the silver light of the rain and the deep restorative power of the green. As we settle into this newly awakened landscape, we begin to notice a shift in our perspective. Imagine for a moment that we are becoming smaller, drifting down with the weightless grace of a falling petal until we are no larger than a grain of sand. The green carpet beneath us is no longer a simple texture. It transforms into a vast, rugged terrain of immense complexity. What once looked like a flat patch of velvet now reveals itself as a miniature mountain range, a world of jagged emerald peaks, deep, cool canyons, and winding, shadowed valleys. This is the microtopography of the moss, a secret geography that exists right beneath our feet, where every stem is a towering pillar and every tiny leaf is a wide, translucent ledge. Within this emerald wilderness, life is unfolding on a scale that is as busy as it is silent. We might look at a single square meter of this moss, a space no larger than a small bedside rug, and see only a quiet, motionless quilt. Yet, if we look through our micro lens, we find that this small patch is a thriving metropolis. It is estimated that a single square meter of healthy moss can be home to over 100,000 tiny invertebrates. Thousands of silver-moted mites, slow-moving springtails, and microscopic wanderers navigate these green corridors, finding everything they need within the span of a few inches. For these creatures, a single clump of moss is an entire continent, a rich and varied land of plenty where they can wander for a lifetime without ever reaching the edge. As we move deeper into these mossy valleys, we notice how the very air begins to change. The moss does more than just provide a place for these tiny lives to rest. It creates its own atmosphere, a private world with its own gentle rules. This is the magic of the microclimate. While a harsh wind might be whistling through the high branches of the ancient oaks above, down here, nestled among the bryophytes, the air is perfectly still. The moss acts as a living barrier, a soft wall that breaks the force of the wind and traps the earth's natural warmth. There is a profound sense of sanctuary in this stability. If we were to tuck a tiny thermometer deep into the heart of one of these moss cushions, we would discover a remarkable secret. The temperature inside a moss clump is significantly more stable than the air just a few inches above it. When the afternoon sun beats down, the moss stays cool and moist. When the frost of evening creeps across the forest floor, the moss retains the lingering hum of the day's warmth. It is a natural thermal buffer, a coast insulation that protects the delicate inhabitants from the frantic changes of the seasons. We can feel this stability in our own rhythm now, a sense of being shielded and held. In the velvet laboratory, there is no need to hurry, no need to brace against the elements. The moss has already done the work of creating a calm, consistent space. We are wandering through a landscape where the climate is always mild, where the moisture is always balanced, and where the light is always soft. It is a world built on the quiet wisdom of staying low to the ground, finding strength in the shadows, and creating a home that breathes in harmony with the earth itself. In these deep emerald canyons, we find a peace that is untouched by the world above, a stillness that invites us to linger just a little longer in the cool, shaded heart of the green. We linger here in the dim, cool embrace of the understory, where the light is no longer a bright, piercing thing, but a soft, sifted memory of the sun. The tall trees far above us are engaged in a slow-motion race, stretching their heavy limbs and broad leaves to capture every possible beam. They are hungry for the light, needing vast amounts of energy to sustain their towering heights and complex systems. But as we rest our gaze upon the moss, we see a different way of being, a more patient way of growing. Mosses have mastered the art of the shadow. They do not need the full golden glare of the afternoon to thrive. In fact, many species are happiest in the deep velvet gloom where other plants would simply struggle to survive. While a flowering plant or a sturdy shrub might require a wealth of sunshine to fuel its journey, mosses possess a remarkable, quiet efficiency. They can begin the delicate work of photosynthesis, turning light into life, at levels so low they seem almost impossible to our eyes. Imagine, if you will, the light of the sun as a great rushing river. By the time that light filters through the layers of oak, maple, and pine, only a few stray droplets reach the forest floor. Some mosses can flourish on just 1% of full sunlight. They are the patient gleaners of the forest, finding abundance in what the giants have left behind. They do not fight for a place in the sun. They find their home in the absence of it. This ability comes from a beautiful, hidden adaptation within their tiny green leaves. They use a specific type of chlorophyll, a pigment finely tuned and optimized to the wavelengths of light that manage to pierce the heavy canopy. It is a specialized tool for a specialized life, allowing them to capture the dim, cool hues of the deep woods and transform them into energy with a gentle, unhurried grace. This molecular harmony allows them to remain vibrant and green in places where the world seems almost monochrome. There is a profound lesson in this low-light living, a quiet comfort we can carry with us. We do not always need the brightest stage or the most intense energy to grow. There is power in the quiet corners, and there is a steady, rhythmic strength in needing very little. As we watch the moss breathe in the shadows, we can feel our own need for intensity slipping away, replaced by the calm of the understory. We are learning to be comfortable in the dimness, to appreciate the soft, muted colors of a world that doesn't need to shout to be seen. The moss reminds us that even in the deepest shade, there is enough. There is always enough light to sustain us, if we only know how to receive it with a soft and open heart. We breathe slowly now, matching the moss's own patient pace. There is no urgency to reach for the sky, no pressure to grow faster than the shadows allow. We are perfectly content here, low to the ground, bathed in the sifted emerald light of the forest floor. In this sanctuary of shadows, the work of living happens so softly, so quietly, that it feels like a dream. We are simply here, existing in the cool, green peace of the understory, where the light is always gentle and the world is always still. As we rest here, in the cool, dim quiet of the understory, let us look closer at the moss itself, that soft, emerald cushion that cradles the earth. When you reach out your hand and your mind to brush against the velvet, you are touching something truly extraordinary in the kingdom of plants. This lush green expanse we see and feel, the part that stays with us through the seasons, is known to science as the game tophyte. It is the heart and soul of the moss's journey, and it holds a secret that sets it apart from almost every other green thing in the forest. In the world of the giant trees above us, the oak and the pine, the part we see, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, is what scientists call the sporophyte. Those giants carry two complete sets of genetic instructions in every cell, a double blueprint for life. But the moss chooses a path of elegant simplicity. The green velvet beneath us is haploid, meaning it carries only a single set of instructions, a single thread of ancient song that guides its growth. It is as if the moss is living in a state of beautiful, singular focus, unburdened by the complexity of the giants. This green stage, the game to fight, is what we call the dominant generation. While other plants treat this phase as a fleeting moment, a tiny grain of pollen or a hidden pill, the moss embraces it. It is the permanent resident of the forest floor, the enduring carpet that weathers the frost and the heat. These tacti-soft stems and delicate leaves are not just a part of the plant. They are the plant as it exists most of the time, living in a quiet, steady rhythm that can last for years or even decades. Imagine the gentleness of such an existence. Because it carries only one set of blueprints, every cell in this green carpet is in direct harmony with its environment. There is a purity to it, a lack of hidden layers. When you look at a vast field of moss, you are seeing a world built on this singular, simple foundation. It is a reminder that complexity is not always required for resilience. The moss does not need the double-layered armor of the trees to find its place in the world. It is content to be small, to be simple, and to be singular. We can feel the peace in that simplicity. As we settle deeper into our own rest, we might imagine ourselves shedding the heavy layers of our day, the complicated thoughts, and the double-edged worries that often clutter our minds. We can lean into the singular focus of the moss, becoming like the game toe fight, present, enduring, and beautifully uncomplicated. We are just here, in this moment, a single thread of awareness in the cool green dark. The soft green stems we see are the providers, the gatherers of light and water, the steady anchors for the life that will eventually follow. They are the stage upon which the rest of the moss's life cycle will unfold. But for now, they are simply a place of rest. They do not hurry to the next stage of their lives. They are perfectly happy to remain as they are, a soft and constant presence on the stones and the bark, breathing with the forest, waiting with the patience that only the very ancient can truly understand. We stay here with them, wrapped in the simplicity of the green, as the forest hums its low, rhythmic lullaby around us. As we rest here on the green carpet, we might notice something changing. The velvet is no longer just a flat expanse of emerald, rising up from the soft, leafy surface like delicate whispers from the earth, are thousands of tiny towers. They are so small that they might go unnoticed by a hurried traveler. But for us, in this slow and quiet space, they are a wonder to behold. These are the sporophytes, the second half of the moss's ancient story. They do not share the vibrant green of the moss below. Instead, they carry the warm, earthy tones of the sunset. We see them in shades of deep amber, soft russet, and quiet, weathered browns. They rise like a miniature forest within a forest, swaying ever so slightly as we breathe. If we were to look with our micro lens, we would see that each of these tiny towers is composed of three perfect parts. At the very base, tucked away and hidden deep within the embrace of the green leaves, is the foot. The foot is a tender, vital connection. It is the anchor that holds the sporophyte steady, but it is also a bridge. Through this tiny point of contact, the green moss shares its life and its nutrients with the tower above. The sporophyte does not need to search for its own food. It is held, nurtured, and sustained by the green mother below. It is a relationship of total trust, a quiet reliance that ensures the next generation has everything it needs to grow. From the foot, the seta rises. The seta is the long, slender stalk that gives the sporophyte its height. It is as thin as a strand of silk, yet it possesses a surprising, flexible strength. It is a tiny wire of life reaching upward, lifting the future of the moss away from the damp shadows of the floor and into the path of the wandering breeze. We can't imagine the patience required for such a delicate structure to grow cell by cell, pushing slowly toward the sky. It does not hurry. It moves with the steady, unhurried rhythm of the forest itself, rising until it stands tall and brave above the velvet, and there, at the very peak of the seta, sits the capsule. It is a small, elegant vessel, a tiny crown for the tower. This capsule is the heart of the sporophyte's purpose. It is a vessel of potential, a quiet treasure chest holding the tiny spores that will one day become a new green carpet elsewhere in the woods. When we look at a field of moss covered in these reddish-brown towers, we are looking at a landscape of hope and continuity. Each capsule is a promise kept, a tiny container of life waiting for the perfect moment to open. We feel the stillness of these towers. They do not move on their own. They only dance when the air moves them. They are patient, standing in their hundreds and thousands, waiting in the cool, dim light of the understory. As we settle deeper into our blankets, we can mirror their stillness. Like the sporophyte, we can be content to be held and supported, allowing the world around us to provide what we need as we simply exist in this peaceful, upright grace. The forest is full of these tiny rising towers, each one a testament to the quiet strength of being small, being patient, and being part of a greater whole. We watch them sway, a sea of amber above the green, as the rhythm of the woods lulls us further into the soft, dark embrace of the night. As we look closer at these tiny amber towers, we notice a soft, delicate detail at the very top of each capsule. It is a tenon-pointed hood resting gently over the tip like a miniature cap or a sleeping veil. In the language of science, we call this the calyptra. It is a word that feels like a whisper, a soft breath of air passing through the leaves. The calyptra is a beautiful example of how nature provides shelter for its most vulnerable parts. It sits there, shielding the young spores within the capsule from the wind and the rain, ensuring they are safe and dry while they mature in the cool, quiet air. There is something deeply moving about the history of this little hood. It is not actually grown by the sporophyte itself. Instead, it is a precious gift from the past, a remnant of the female game to fight, the soft green moss that we saw earlier. When the young sporophyte first began its journey, pushing upward from the moss floor, it carried a piece of its mother with it. The calyptra is a fragment of that maternal tissue stretched and lifted high into the air. It is as if the green carpet below wanted to reach up and tuck its child in, providing a final layer of protection even as the two parts grow into different forms. We can think of it as a lingering embrace, a way for the ancient moss to keep its offspring safe during the most delicate stages of its life. The texture of the calyptra varies from one moss to another. In some, it is smooth and translucent, like a tiny glass dome. In others, it is covered in fine silken hairs, making it look like a fuzzy woolen hat. These hairs help to trap moisture and provide a soft cushion against the world outside. As we imagine ourselves rest in the forest, we can feel the same sense of being shielded. We are tucked under our own layers of comfort, safe and protected from the distractions of the day. The world outside may be vast, but here, under the canopy, everything is small, focused, and incredibly gentle. The calyptra does not stay forever. It is a temporary guardian, a companion for a specific season. As the spores inside the capsule reach their full maturity and become ready to meet the wind, the calyptra begins to loosen. It has done its work. With a gentle nudge from a breeze or the natural growth of the capsule beneath it, the little hood simply slips away. It falls softly to the forest floor, returning to the earth from which it came. Its departure is not a loss, but a signal that a new stage of life is beginning. It leaves behind a capsule that is now strong, seasoned, and ready to face the open air. With the calyptra gone, the capsule is revealed in its full, elegant form. We can see the subtle colors and the smooth surface of the vessel now standing unshielded but fully prepared. The shedding of the hood is a quiet, rhythmic event that happens millions of times across the forest floor. A silent transition that marks the passage of time in the moss world. We breathe in the scent of the damp earth and the moss, feeling the same readiness to let go of the day's thoughts, shedding our worries just as the capsule sheds its little hat. We are becoming lighter, more focused on the rhythmic pulse of the forest as we move deeper into the mysteries of the moss's heart. There is a sense of relief in this shedding, a peaceful surrender to the next part of the journey. We watch as the caps drift down, settling into the velvet green, leaving the towers tall and clear against the dimming light. Now that the protective hood has drifted away, we can see the true face of the capsule. At its very tip sits the operculum, a tiny, snug-fitting lid that has kept the spores sealed within their chamber. It is shaped like a small stopper or a delicate pointed cap carved with the precision of a master craftsman. This lid is the final barrier between the spores and the wide world. It waits patiently for the right moment, sensing the changes in the air around us. As the air becomes drier and the spores inside reach their full maturity, the operculum begins to loosen its grip. There is no sudden snap, only a gentle, slow release. Eventually, it falls away, tumbling quietly into the green depths below, leaving the capsule open to the sky beneath the lid. A truly remarkable structure is revealed. Encircling the mouth of the capsule is a ring of tiny, hair-like structures known as the peristome teeth. Though we call them teeth, they are not sharp or hard. Instead, they are like the finest sealed fingers or the delicate petals of a microscopic flower. These teeth are the guardians of the moss's future, and they move with a rhythmic, pulsing life that is almost invisible to the naked eye. They are hygroscopic, which means they are incredibly sensitive to the moisture in the air. When the forest is damp and the air is heavy with mist or rain, these teeth respond to the touch of the water. They slowly curve inward, interlocking with one another to form a tight, protective seal over the capsule's opening. We can imagine this movement as a slow, deep breath. When the world is wet, the moss tucks its treasures away, keeping the spores safe and dry inside their vessel. The moss understands that for its spores to travel far and find a new home, they need the lightness of a dry breeze. If they were to be released during a rainstorm, they would become heavy and clump together, falling uselessly to the saturated ground beneath. So, the peristome teeth act as a natural valve, a living gate that only opens when the conditions are perfect. As the sun begins to filter through the canopy and the humidity drops, the teeth sense the change. They begin to uncurl, slowly straightening and moving outward, pulling away from the center to reveal the golden dust of the spores within. This opening and closing is a slow, rhythmic dance, a pulse that mirrors the rising and falling of the sun and the shifting of the winds. It is the breath of the moss, a quiet, mechanical intelligence that has been refined over hundreds of millions of years. In the dry afternoon air, the teeth may even perform a gentle flicking motion, a tiny nudge that helps to launch the spores into the passing currents of air. We can almost hear the softest of whispers as the spores are set free, drifting away like microscopic embers from a cooling fire. They are so light that they do not fall. They simply become part of the air we breathe, floating on the invisible rivers of the forest. We rest here, watching this silent process, feeling our own breath fall into sync with the rhythmic movement of the peristome. Just as the moss knows when to hold on and when to let go, we find ourselves letting go of the tension in our shoulders and the thoughts in our minds. The moss does not hurry. It waits for the air to be just right, trusting in the natural cycles of the world to carry its life forward. There is a deep comfort in this patience, a sense that everything happens in its own time. The capsule stands tall, its tiny teeth swaying ever so slightly in the dry air, a miniature beacon of resilience and grace. As the spores drift away, the capsule remains, a hollowed tower of green and brown having fulfilled its purpose with quiet dignity. We feel a sense of lightness ourselves, as if we too are drifting on that same gentle breeze carried by the slow, steady pulse of the forest floor. The world around us is full of these tiny mechanical wonders working in total silence to ensure the continuity of life, and we are privileged to witness their soft, rhythmic labor. As we let our gaze sink deeper past the capsules and the swaying stalks, we move into the lush, hidden corridors of the moss itself. This green expanse is more than just a carpet. It is a sprawling miniature metropolis, a sanctuary for life that thrives in the quiet spaces between the leaves. Within these damp emerald halls lives a creature of such gentle persistence and quiet renown that it has become a symbol of the enduring strength of the natural world. We call them water bears, though science knows them as tardigrades. The name itself suggests a slow, steady pace, and as we observe them in our mind's eye, we find ourselves slowing down to match their rhythmic, unhurried world. Imagine, if you will, a creature so small it remains invisible to the naked eye, usually measuring less than 1 millimeter in length. If we were to shrink down, becoming as small as a single grain of pollen,
we would see them clearly, navigating the mossy forest with a lumbering, peaceful grace.
They are plump and segmented, possessing 4 pairs of stubby, soft legs. They do not scurry or dart like the insects of the sunlit world above. Instead, they move with a steady, hypnotic cadence, their 8 legs working in a slow-motion harmony that feels like a physical lullaby. Their tiny claws, delicate and precise, find purchase on the moss leaves, pulling them forward through the thin films of water that cling to every surface in this miniature wilderness. Within this liquid world, the water bear finds a quiet abundance. It does not wander with urgency. It simply grazes, a tiny nomad in a land of plenty. To nourish itself, it uses 2 minute needle-like structures called stylets. With a deliberate and gentle motion, it uses these to pierce the cell walls of the moss, sipping the fluids within as if from a hidden wellspring. It is a soft, rhythmic exchange of energy, a sipping of the forest's essence that fuels the water bear's long, slow journey. We can imagine the sensation of it, the coolness of the water, the richness of the green cells, and the profound silence of the mossy depths. There is a deep, ancient wisdom in their stillness. The water bear is a traveler of immense resilience, perhaps the most patient wanderer in the known universe. While we find comfort in the softness of our blankets and the warmth of our rooms, the water bear carries a quiet strength that allows it to survive the most extreme conditions imaginable. They have been known to endure the cold, silent vacuum of outer space, drifting among the stars in a state of deep, dreamless waiting. They do not fight the environment. They simply pause, tucking themselves away until the world becomes soft and damp once more. This ability to wait, to exist in a state of pure suspended peace, is a testament to the quiet power of the small. We watch one now, its 8 legs moving in a steady alternating pulse, left, then right, then left again, a walk that has remained unchanged for over 500 million years. There is no destination other than the next cool droplet of dew or the next succulent leaf. As we follow this tiny wanderer through the green shadows, we feel our own breath becoming long and steady. The world is vast and we are small, but here in the moss, smallness is a form of majesty. We breathe in the cool, damp scent of the earth, feeling the same enduring peace that carries the water bear through the ages. We are safe here, nestled in the velvet folds of the forest floor, where even the smallest heartbeat moves with the rhythm of the universe. The water bear continues its walk, a tiny 8-legged reminder that life is persistent, life is patient, and life is always at rest. As our 8-legged friend, the water bear, drifts further into the emerald shadows, we stay here for a moment, focused on a single, shimmering bead of dew clinging to the tip of a moss leaf. Inside this tiny, translucent world, there are others who find sanctuary in the stillness. We look closer, letting our vision soften until we see the rotifer. They are delicate, transparent beings, so small that they seem to be made of light and water alone. It is one of nature's most beautiful secrets that a creature so complex, composed of many hundreds of cells and organized systems, can be smaller than many of the single-celled organisms drifting beside it. They are masterpieces of the miniature, living their entire lives in a space no larger than a grain of dust. Yet, They move with a grace that is ancient and sure. At the very top of the rotifer's slender body, we see a crown of fine silken hairs known as cilia. These hairs do not move randomly. They move in a perfect rhythmic sequence, like a field of tall grass swaying in a gentle, rhythmic wind. To our eyes, this motion creates the mesmerizing illusion of two spinning wheels turning and turning in a quiet, eternal loop. This is the wheel organ, or the corona. It is not a machine, but a dance, a synchronized pulsing that creates a tiny, gentle whirlpool in the surrounding water. We can imagine the sensation of this movement, a soft, liquid hum that vibrates through the moss, a microscopic lullaby that draws the world toward it in a slow, swirling embrace. Within this tiny vortex, the rotifer gathers what it needs to thrive. It does not wander with urgency. It simply waits and invites the water to bring its gifts. Tiny particles of minerals and soft organic nutrients are pulled into the center of the spinning crown, a quiet harvest gathered from the liquid atmosphere of the forest floor. It is a peaceful, effortless way of being, a constant flow, where the rotifer and the water move as one. There is no struggle here, only the steady circular movement of life sustaining itself. We watch the whirlpool spin, a silver spiral within a diamond drop, and we feel our own thoughts beginning to circle in the same slow, hypnotic rhythm, shedding the weight of the day as we sink deeper into the mossy green. And like the velvet moss that cradles them, the rotifer understands the deep wisdom of the long wait. They are masters of patience, capable of entering a profound restorative sleep when the moisture of the forest begins to fade. As the sun warms the air and the moss curls inward to protect its heart, the rotifer also begins its transition. It folds its delicate wheel organ away, tucking its tiny body into a protective shape, and enters a state of dormancy that can last for years. In this quiet state, time has no meaning. They are simply waiting for the return of the rain, for the first cool touch of a cloud to awaken the forest. They are safe in their silent sleep, tucked away in the crevices of the velvet carpet, knowing with a cellular certainty that the water will always return. We breathe with them now, a slow and steady breath, feeling the comfort of a world that knows how to rest, how to wait, and how to begin again when the time is right. As we continue to drift through the liquid atmosphere of our mossy sanctuary, we find that the water bear and the rotifer are not alone in their quiet world. There is a third companion, a slender traveler that moves through the green labyrinth with a grace that is both ancient and mesmerizing. These are the nematodes, often known as threadworms, though we might think of them more as living strands of silver silk weaving their way through the intricate architecture of the forest floor. If we look closely at the thin film of water that coats every moss leaf, we see them. They are nearly transparent, appearing like shimmering ribbons of light as they glide through the moisture. Their movement is a slow, rhythmic undulation, a constant series of gentle S-curves that propel them forward through the velvet valleys. There is no haste in their journey, only a steady, sinuous flow that mimics the swaying of the branches high above. They move like a slow-motion ripple on a still pond, a movement so fluid and consistent that it becomes a visual lullaby, inviting our eyes to follow their winding paths until we feel ourselves swaying in time with them. in a single small handful of this damp emerald moss. There may be many thousands of these thread-like beings. It is a vast and peaceful civilization, hidden in plain sight, where every resident has a purpose. Despite their numbers, there is no sense of crowding or chaos. Instead, there is a perfect, quiet balance. The nematodes are the silent gardeners of the micro-world. As they glide between the moss cells, they perform a vital service, breaking down microscopic organic matter and transforming it into the very nutrients that allow the moss to thrive. They are the weavers of the forest's health, cycling the elements of life back into the earth so that the cycle can begin anew. We can imagine the moss as a great green loom and the nematodes as the shuttles moving back and forth, carrying the threads of life through the fabric of the forest floor. They are essential to the world we see. Without these tiny silver threads, the great trees would lack the nourishment they need to reach toward the stars. The health of the entire forest, from the smallest spore to the tallest pine, begins here, in the rhythmic, winding paths of the nematode. They remind us that even the smallest movements, when performed with consistency and grace, contribute to the harmony of the whole. As we watch them weave their way through the moss, we feel the interconnectedness of all things. The water, the moss, the rotifer, and the nematode all exist in a shared space of mutual support and quiet existence. There is a deep comfort in knowing that beneath our feet, and perhaps even in the quiet spaces of our own lives, there are unseen forces working to maintain balance, to nourish, and to heal. We let our breath follow the curve of the nematode's path, a slow, winding inhale and a long, silken exhale. The world is balanced. The world is at peace. We are simply a part of this great green web, resting in the soft, rhythmic heart of the forest. The silver threads continue their dance, and we continue our drift, sinking deeper into the cool, dark comfort of the velvet laboratory. We move now from the visible movement of the tiny forest dwellers to a much quieter, microscopic conversation happening within the very fabric of the moss itself. If we look closer still, past the silver threads of the nematodes, we find the blue-green whispers of the cyanobacteria. These are among the oldest living things on our planet, tiny organisms that have mastered the art of living in harmony with the green world. They are not merely visitors, they are the moss's most intimate companions, sharing a bond that is as ancient as the stones themselves. In the quiet spaces between the moss leaves, and sometimes even tucked away in specialized internal pockets, these cyanobacteria find a safe harbor. In return for this gentle shelter, they offer a gift that the rest of the forest relies upon. They possess a rare and beautiful magic, the ability to take nitrogen from the air, a gas that is all around us, but remains out of reach for most plants, and transform it into a form that the moss can breathe in as nourishment. This process, known as nitrogen fixation, is a slow, silent alchemy that turns the invisible atmosphere into the tangible substance of life. This is the gift of nitrogen. It is a quiet, rhythmic exchange. As the cyanobacteria work their wonders, they essentially fertilize the moss from the inside out. This partnership is a testament to the power of shared existence. The moss provides the moisture and the home, and the bacteria provide the life-giving nutrients that allow the moss to stay vibrant and lush, even when the soil beneath is poor and thin. We can imagine this as a soft internal glow, a secret source of strength that keeps the moss green even when the world around it seems sparse. We can see the importance of this relationship most clearly in the vast, quiet expanses of the northern tundra. In these cold, windswept places, where the ground is often frozen and nutrients are scarce, the moss and its blue-green partners are the primary architects of life. They are the ones who gather the invisible riches of the sky and bring them down to the earth. Without this silent cooperation, the tundra would be a much lonelier place. Instead, the moss creates a soft, fertile carpet that supports the entire ecosystem, acting as a gentle provider for everything that walks upon it. Take a slow, deep breath, imagining that cool, clean air being gathered by the moss. Feel the stillness of this ancient pact. It is a relationship built on trust and time, a slow unfolding of mutual support that has continued for hundreds of millions of years. There is no rush here, only a steady, rhythmic sharing. The moss does not take more than it needs, and the bacteria give freely of their abundance. This quiet fertilization happens everywhere moss grows, in the cracks of a city sidewalk, on the bark of an old oak, and across the floor of the deep woods. It is a reminder that even in the most challenging environments, life finds a way to support life. The world is not a place of urgency, but a place of constant, quiet exchange. As we rest here, we can feel that same sense of support. We are held by the earth, just as the cyanobacteria are held by the moss. Everything is provided for, everything is in its right place. As we drift further into this emerald world, the air feels heavier with the scent of damp earth and ancient growth. The moss continues its work, breathing in the sky and turning it into the green velvet we lean upon. We are beginning to see how these tiny plants shape the very world they inhabit, creating vast landscapes of moisture and memory that stretch across the horizon. The forest floor is not just a carpet, it is a living, breathing laboratory of peace, where the smallest organisms perform the greatest miracles of all, preparing the way for even larger wonders to unfold in the mist. As we drift further, the air begins to change, growing cooler and more fragrant with the scent of ancient water and wild open spaces. We are leaving the shade of the forest canopy and moving toward the vast, silver-misted expanses of the wetlands. Here, the ground beneath us transitions into a deep, resilient cushion, a landscape shaped by a single, remarkable inhabitant, sphagnum moss. Often whispered of as the bog king, sphagnum is a plant that does not merely live in its environment, it creates it. It is the architect of the great peatlands, those silent, shimmering reaches of the world where time seems to fold in on itself, becoming as still as the water held within the moss's own cells. Look closely at a single strand of this moss. It is a delicate structure, topped with a small star-like head of branches. But its true power lies within its hidden architecture. If we were to look through a micro lens, we would see that sphagnum is composed of two very different types of cells, working in perfect harmony. There are the small, living green cells that carry out the gentle work of the sun, and then there are the large hollow chambers known as hyaline cells. These are the moss's secret reservoirs. They are reinforced with tiny spiral bands to keep them from collapsing like the walls of a sturdy miniature house. When the rain falls, these chambers open their doors, drawing in the moisture until the moss is heavy and swollen with life. A single handful of sphagnum can hold 26 times its own dry weight in water, making it one of the most effective natural sponges on our planet. Because of this incredible thirst, the sphagnum moss builds a world that is perpetually bathed in moisture. As the moss grows upward year after year, the older layers beneath it become submerged, creating a deep, saturated foundation that never truly dries. This is the birth of the peat bog. In these spaces, the moss does something truly extraordinary for the world's chemistry. It begins to release hydrogen ions into the water, slowly and steadily shifting the environment until it becomes acidic. In this gentle, amber-colored acidity, the normal cycles of the world begin to move with a different rhythm. The tiny organisms that usually help things return to the earth find themselves moving more slowly here. The natural process of change itself seems to pause, held in a long, quiet embrace by the moss. We can feel this stillness as we rest here, imagining the vastness of these wetlands stretching out under a moonlit sky. The bog is a place of deep rhythmic breathing, where the water is held in a velvet grip. The sphagnum moss creates a landscape that is both soft and immensely strong, a sprawling kingdom of green and gold that can stretch for miles across the horizon. It is a world where the air is always cool and the water is always near, cradled in the millions of tiny rooms the moss has built. Here, the Bog King reigns in absolute silence, turning the rain into a legacy of peat that will last for millennia. We are sinking into this cushion now, feeling the weight of the day being absorbed by the moss, just as it absorbs the cooling mist of the evening. We are becoming part of the bog's long, slow memory, held safely in its acidic amber embrace, where the rush of the outside world cannot reach us. In this space, everything is preserved, and everything is at peace. In this stillness, we begin to perceive that the peat bog is much more than a collection of water and moss. It is a vast, silent library where history is held in a long, cool suspension. As we settle into the softness of our own surroundings, let us imagine the world beneath the surface of the green carpet. As the sphagnum moss grows and the older layers are pressed down, they create an environment that is almost entirely anaerobic. This means that deep within the bog, the oxygen of the atmosphere cannot reach. In this oxygen-free sanctuary, the natural processes of change and decay are gently asked to wait. The tiny organisms that would otherwise return things to the earth find themselves unable to work in these acidic, airless depths. The bog becomes a place where time itself seems to pool and settle like a calm lake in the center of a deep wood. Because of this extraordinary chemistry, the peat has the power to preserve organic matter for thousands of years. We find evidence of this in what are known as bog bodies, individuals from the ancient past who have been kept in a state of perfect repose. When we look upon these figures, they do not appear as remnants of a lost time, but rather as people who have only just closed their eyes for a long, dreamless sleep. The humic acid and the tannins released by the moss work a slow natural alchemy. They gently tan the skin, turning it to a soft, dark leather that retains every fine line and detail. The hair remains, sometimes tinted, a deep reddish gold by the moss, and the features of the face are held in a peaceful, eternal expression. It is not just the physical form that the moss protects. The bog is also a guardian of the things we once wore and used. We find intricate woolen cloaks where every thread of the weave is still visible, as if it were taken off only yesterday. We find leather shoes with their laces still tied in sturdy knots, and wooden tools that have not warped or softened despite the passage of 2,000 years. The peat bog acts as a warm, damp vault, shielding these items from the wind, the sun, and the air. In the embrace of the moss, the past is not a memory. It is a physical presence resting quietly beneath the ripples of the water. We can feel the comfort in this kind of permanence. There's a safety in being held so securely that even the centuries cannot touch you. As we breathe in the cool, damp air of our imaginary forest, we can feel ourselves sinking into a similar state of preservation. The weight of our blankets feels like the gentle pressure of the peat, pressing away the sharp edges of the day and leaving only the soft, rounded stillness of the night. We are becoming part of this long, slow rhythm, where there is no rush to move and no need to change. We are held in the velvet laboratory of the earth, where everything is kept safe, everything is valued, and everything is at peace, tucked away in the amber depths where the world is always quiet and the moss is always soft. As we rest here, imagining the depth of the peat beneath us, we realize that the moss is holding on to more than just the echoes of the past. It is also holding on to the future. Deep within these damp, dark layers, the moss performs a quiet miracle of stewardship. It is a guardian of the atmosphere, a silent protector of the air we breathe. We can think of the peatlands as the earth's memory, but they are also its cooling heart. You may have heard of the great forest of the world with their towering canopies and vast expanses of green. We often think of them as the primary holders of life's building blocks. But here, in the humble, low-lying peatlands, a much deeper work is being done. It is a beautiful irony of nature that something so small and low to the ground can carry such a massive responsibility for the sake of the planet. Though these moss-covered lands occupy only about 3% of the Earth's surface, they store more carbon than all the world's forests combined. It is a staggering thought, a testament to the power of the small and the patient. The moss gathers the carbon from the air, pulling the breath of the sun into its tiny green leaves, and then pressing it slowly, year after year, into the earth. Once it is tucked away in the peat, that carbon is kept in a long, cool slumber. In the airless, watery depths, it is prevented from returning to the sky where it might otherwise gather too much warmth. In this way, the moss acts as a natural cooling blanket for our world. It regulates the temperature of the earth with the same gentle care a parent might use to adjust a soft quilt over a sleeping child, ensuring that everything remains in perfect, comfortable balance. We can feel the coolness of this thought as we settle further into our pillows. The earth is being cared for, even as we sleep. The moss is working, quietly sequestering the elements that would disrupt our peace. It is a slow, rhythmic gathering, a process that has been happening for thousands of years without ever needing to hurry. The stability of our climate, the very air that feels so soft and cool against our skin tonight, is being maintained by these vast, silent stretches of green. Protecting these places is like protecting the world's own breath. When the peat remains undisturbed, the world stays balanced and calm. We can take a slow, deep breath ourselves, feeling the air fill our lungs, knowing that the moss is out there doing its part to keep that air fresh and the world temperate. There is no urgency in this work. It is the steady, unhurried pace of the natural world. The moss does not need to be tall or loud to be powerful. It simply needs to exist, to grow and to hold. As we sink deeper into our own rest, we can appreciate the strength in that stillness, finding comfort in the knowledge that the smallest plants are the most significant guardians of our shared home. The world remains cool, quiet, and wonderfully still, held in the velvet embrace of the mossy earth. As we move away from the deep, still waters of the peatlands, we let our minds drift further north, where the air grows even crisper and the sun hangs low and golden on the horizon. We are traveling toward the vast open spaces of the Arctic, a place of immense silence and shimmering light. Here, the landscape stretches out in a grand, quiet beauty, and the trees have stepped back, finding the ground too firm and the winters too long for their tall reaches. But where the trees cannot go, the moss flourishes. It does not fear the cold. Instead, it embraces the stillness of the high latitudes. In these polar reaches, the moss transforms into what we call the tundra carpet, a resilient, living tapestry that covers the vast expanse of the frozen north in shades of copper, sul, and deep, restful green. Beneath this carpet lies the permafrost, ground that has stayed frozen for thousands of years. The moss plays a vital and nurturing role here, acting as a thick layer of thermal insulation. Just as a heavy wool blanket keeps us warm and cozy in our beds, the moss keeps the earth beneath it shielded. During the brief, bright summers, the moss prevents the warmth of the sun from reaching the deep ice, protecting the ancient frozen ground from thawing. It is a quiet, protective layer, a guardian of the earth's frozen memory, ensuring that the foundation of the world remains solid and undisturbed. We can feel the stability in that thought, the comfort of a world that is held firmly and gently in place. In this quiet, frosty landscape, we find the lemmings. These tiny, soft-furred creatures move with a gentle purpose, and they rely on the moss for their very existence. To a lemming, the tundra carpet is not just a floor, but a pantry and a warm, insulating home. They weave their paths through the thick green layers, finding soft shelter from the biting winds and a steady, reliable source of nourishment. The moss provides for them with a quiet generosity, offering its humble leaves during the long, dark months when nothing else grows. It is a peaceful cycle of giving, a small pocket of life thriving in a world of ice, sustained by the persistence of the green. Perhaps most wondrous of all is the moss's ability to endure the most extreme cold imaginable. While most living things require warmth to survive, some species of Arctic moss can enter a state of deep, profound dormancy. In this state, they can withstand temperatures as low as minus 272 degrees Celsius. This is nearly absolute zero, the coldest temperature possible in our universe. In this state of cryptobiosis, the moss simply pauses. It does not struggle. It does not resist. It simply waits, its tiny cells held in a perfect icy stillness, a dreamless sleep that can last for centuries. When the gentle warmth of a distant spring finally returns, the moss wakes as if no time has passed at all, turning green and vibrant within hours of the thaw. We can imagine ourselves like that moss now, letting go of the day, letting go of the need to do or to be, and simply resting in the stillness. The cold of the world cannot reach us here in our quiet space. We are tucked away, safe and warm, just like the earth beneath the tundra's green embrace. The world is vast and wide, and though it can be silent and cold, there is always a place for softness, a place for resilience, and a place for rest. We are part of this quiet world, breathing and slowly drifting into the cool, calm peace of the northern lights. As we drift from the silent, frozen peaks of the north, we begin to find our way back toward the familiar places where we live, the streets and pathways we walk every day. Even in the heart of our bustling cities, where the air is filled with the hum of life and the ground is paved in stone, the moss finds a way to be our companion. We might see them as we wander, those tiny, vibrant slivers of emerald tucked into the silver-gray crevices of a walkway or nestled in the small gaps between brick. These are the pathway pioneers, the humble explorers of the urban landscape, turning the hard edges of our world into something soft and living. Among these city dwellers, there is a special one known as Bryum argenteum, or the silvery thread moss. It is a small, shimmering creature, its leaves tipped with a delicate, translucent white that gives it a frosted, moonlit appearance. This silvery sheen is not just for beauty, it is a clever adaptation. The pale tips reflect the harsh light of the sun, keeping the tiny plant cool and moist against the warmth of the stones. It is a master of the urban environment, a tiny survivor that finds a home where others cannot. In a world where the air can be heavy with the traces of our busy lives, the silvery thread moss remains serene. It is remarkably resilient, capable of thriving even in the presence of city pollution. While many plants struggle in such environments, this moss has the unique ability to withstand concentrations of heavy metals, such as lead, that would be difficult for others to endure. It does not fight against its surroundings. It simply exists within them, acting as a quiet filter, absorbing the complexity of the city into its own soft body, remaining pure and green. When the summer sun warms the bricks and the paved paths, these small patches of moss work a quiet magic. They help to soften what we call the urban heat island effect, a phenomenon where the stone and metal of a city hold on to the sun's warmth, making the air much hotter than the surrounding countryside. By holding on to tiny droplets of moisture and breathing them slowly back into the air, the moss acts like a natural cooling system. Each small patch is a miniature oasis, a tiny reservoir of coolness that humbles the heat of the day. We can imagine those small green islands now, scattered across the city like a secret map of softness. They remind us that nature is never truly far away. It is always there, waiting in the quiet spaces, inviting us to look closer and find the beauty in the small things. As we rest, we can feel a sense of shared resilience with these tiny pioneers. Just as the moss finds its peace in the small crevices of the world, we find our peace, in the quiet of our own space. The city outside may be wide and busy, but here, in the company of the green, everything is slow. Everything is cool and everything is at rest. We are safe and still, drifting into the gentle rhythm of the moss as it breathes beneath the city stars. We are drifting now, our thoughts as light as the spores we spoke of earlier, moving from the green crevices of the city back into the wider, wilder spaces of the world. As we look at the textures around us, it is easy to see everything soft and low as part of the same green family. But there is a gentle distinction we can learn to see, a quiet secret held by the stones and the branches. Not everything that carpets the world is a moss, though they share the same love for the quiet and the damp. Think of the lichen. It is often found side by side with our mosses, a companion in the stillness. Yet, a lichen is something entirely unique. It is not a single plant, but a beautiful, living marriage. It is a partnership between a fungus and an algae, two beings that have chosen to weave their lives together so completely that they appear as one. We can imagine this as a conversation that has lasted for millions of years. The fungus acts as the protector, building a sturdy, intricate home that anchors them to the world, while the tiny algae lives within that structure, catching the golden light of the sun to create food for them both. They are a testament to the power of togetherness, a soft reminder that we are often at our strongest when we lean on one another. In the vast, silent stretches of the northern tundra, there is a famous resident we often call reindeer moss. It covers the ground in a pale, frothy carpet that looks like frozen sea foam. It is a lovely name, but it is a gentle misnomer, a small mistake of language. Reindeer moss is not a moss at all, but a lichen. It grows with a slow, rhythmic patience, taking years to gain just a few inches of height. It does not have the tiny, distinct leaves or the delicate stems that define the mosses we have come to know. Instead, it has a thallus, a word that sounds like a soft sigh. A thallus is the body of the lichen, a simple and elegant form that lacks the complex parts of a plant. In the reindeer lichen, this thallus branches out like the tiny antlers of a miniature stag, creating a lacy, resilient structure that can withstand the most profound cold. When we look closely at a patch of moss, we see the individual leaves, each one a tiny miracle of green. We see the stems that lift them toward the light. But when we look at a lichen, we see a unified texture, a smooth or crinkled surface that feels more like a part of the rock or the wood it rests upon. This is the thallus, a body that does not need to be divided into roots or leaves. It is simply itself, a soft map of survival. While mosses are almost always a deep, vibrant green, lichens bring a different palette to our world. They offer us shades of silver gray, mustard yellow, and even a soft, dusty orange. As we rest here, we can appreciate the diversity of the small. The moss and the lichen live together in a quiet, overlapping world, each one finding its own way to be soft, each one finding its own way to endure. They teach us that there are many ways to belong to the earth, some through the traditional paths of leaves and stems, and others through the beautiful mystery of partnership and shared life. We are part of this landscape too, resting in the harmony of these ancient structures, feeling the weight of the day lift as we sink into the velvet layers of the world. Everything is in its place. Everything is exactly as it should be. A quiet tapestry of green and silver, breathing softly in the dark. This breath we share with the moss is a delicate, invisible thread. Because mosses lack a waxy cuticle, that protective, waterproof skin found on the leaves of tall trees and bright flowers, they are profoundly, beautifully open to the world around them. They do not filter. They do not hide behind a barrier. Instead, they absorb everything directly through their soft, translucent surfaces. They drink the mist, they catch the wandering dust, and they breathe the very same air that is currently moving through your lungs in a slow, steady rhythm. This openness makes the moss more than just a plant. It makes it a mirror of the environment itself. In the quiet language of science, we call the moss a bioindicator. It is a gentle sentinel, acting much like the historic canary in the coal mine, but with a much more peaceful presence. Because they are so sensitive to the quality of the atmosphere, the presence of lush, vibrant moss is a silent promise that the air is pure and clean. When you see a forest draped in thick emerald carpets, you are seeing a landscape that is healthy and deep in its own well-being. The moss flourishes only when the world is in balance, acting as a living witness to the clarity of the sky and the purity of the rain. Researchers look to these humble green patches as living archives, reading the history of the air within their tiny, delicate leaves. Because mosses have no roots to draw from the soil, almost everything they contain comes directly from the heavens. Scientists can gather a small cushion of moss and, through careful study, map the hidden stories of the wind. They look for traces of heavy metals, tiny microscopic particles of lead or copper that might have traveled from far away. The moss catches these travelers, holding them gently within its cellular memory, acting as a soft green filter for the planet. It is a quiet, selfless work, a way for the smallest of plants to help us understand the vast movements of our shared world. As you lie here, in the safety of this space, imagine the air around you is as clean and clear as the air in a deep, ancient woodland. Each breath you take is a gift, moving in and out with the same unhurried ease as the wind through the trees. The moss at our feet is thriving, its color deep and true, telling us in its silent way that the air here is good, that the world is resting, and that you are safe to drift into that same stillness. There is a profound honesty in this relationship. A plant that hides nothing and accepts everything the world offers it. It is this same honesty and stillness that has captured the human heart for centuries, leading us to seek out these green spaces not just for study, but for the soul. We find ourselves drawn to the moss when we need to remember how to be still, how to be present, and how to find perfection in the quiet, humble corners of the earth. This connection between the human spirit and the mossy floor is a path that leads us toward a deeper sense of peace, where the air is clear and the mind is finally, softly at rest. This quiet honesty, this ability to simply be, has drawn us to the moss for generations, moving beyond the realm of science and into the soft bases of our own history and spirit. We have long looked at these emerald cushions and seen something of ourselves reflected in their patience. In the tradition of Japan, This connection has been nurtured into an art form, a way of living that celebrates the slow, the humble, and the subtle. In this culture, the word for moss is koki, a small, soft sound that seems to carry the breath of the forest within it. For the people who walk these ancient paths, coke is more than a plant. It is a symbol of longevity, a living representation of the steady, unhurried passage of time. As we rest here together, imagine we are stepping softly into the grounds of Saihoji, a temple in Kyoto so renowned for its green embrace that it is known simply as the Moss Temple. Here, the world is hushed, filtered through a canopy of maples and held in the stillness of the earth. Beneath the trees, a vast, undulating sea of green stretches out in every direction, flowing over roots and stones like a slow-moving river of velvet. Within these sacred walls, scientists and monks alike have counted over 120 different varieties of moss, each one contributing its own unique shade and texture to the landscape. There are mosses that look like tiny ferns, others like miniature stars, and some that form mounds so soft they look like fallen clouds. This garden is the living embodiment of wabi-sabi, a beautiful and comforting philosophy that invites us to find perfection in the imperfect and the transient. In a world that often demands we be bright, new, and flawless, wabi-sabi whispers that there is a deeper beauty in things that are weathered by time, things that are modest, and things that are quiet. Moss is the perfect teacher of this wisdom. It does not seek to stand tall or demand our attention with vibrant flowers. Instead, it grows over the cracks in the stone, softening the sharp edges of the world. It turns a fallen branch into a work of art and a weathered rock into a monument of peace. It reminds us that there is a profound grace in aging, in slowing down, and in simply occupying our space with gentleness. In the Japanese moss garden, nothing is rushed. The moss may take decades to fully claim a stone, moving at a pace that we can barely perceive, yet its persistence is absolute. When we look at a moss-covered lantern or a bridge draped in green, we are seeing the physical manifestation of stillness. It is a reminder that we, too, are allowed to take our time. We are allowed to grow slowly, to soften our own edges, and to find contentment in the quiet corners of our lives. The moss does not compete. It simply flourishes where it is, thriving in the shadows and the damp, turning the forgotten places into sanctuaries. As you breathe in the cool, still air of this imagined garden, let the spirit of Coke settle over you. Feel the weight of your worries being softened by that same green velvet, the sharp thoughts of the day being smoothed over by the rhythmic, steady growth of the forest floor. We are part of this ancient cycle of stillness and longevity. Like the moss at Saihoji, we are finding our place in the quiet, learning to appreciate the beauty of the present moment exactly as it is, imperfect, peaceful, and profoundly whole. The garden remains a sanctuary of emerald light, inviting us to linger in the hush of the afternoon, where the only thing that matters is the soft sensation of the earth beneath us and the gentle, steady rhythm of our own breath. In this space, time does not move in hours or minutes, but in the slow, beautiful unfolding of the green world, guiding us toward a rest that is as deep and enduring as the moss itself. As we linger in the emerald light of the garden, there is one more sense that pulls us deeper into the embrace of the earth, inviting a final, heavy relaxation. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the air as it moves through the forest after a gentle, cooling rain has kissed the mossy stones. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling the air move through you, and notice the fragrance that rises from the ground. It is a scent that feels like coming home, a perfume that is cool, damp, and profoundly grounded. It is the scent of the earth itself, waking up. Scientists have a beautiful name for the primary component of this aroma, geosmin. The word is derived from the Greek geo, meaning earth, and osma, meaning smell. It is a humble name for a chemical compound that carries such immense emotional weight for us. This fragrance is not created by the moss alone, but by a quiet, ancient partnership. Living within the damp soil and nestled among the intricate, thirsty fibers of the moss are tiny organisms known as actinobacteria. As these microscopic neighbors go about their work, they release geosmin into the environment. When a raindrop falls and strikes a patch of moss, it traps tiny bubbles of air against the surface. As these bubbles burst, they launch an invisible mist of geosmin into the breeze, carrying the essence of the forest floor directly to us. We are uniquely, almost magically, tuned to this scent. In fact, the human nose is incredibly sensitive to geosmin, far more sensitive than a shark is to a single drop of blood in the vast ocean. We can detect these molecules at concentrations as low as 5 parts per trillion. To imagine that scale, think of a single drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Our senses are so refined that we could find it even there. This is not a coincidence, but a gift from our ancestors. For the early humans who walked these same forests, the scent of geosmin was a signal of life and safety. It whispered of the proximity of water, the promise of fertile soil, and the arrival of the rain that would sustain the green world. Even now, as you lie in the warmth and safety of your own space, that earthy perfume has the power to lower the heart rate and settle the mind. It is the scent of survival turned into the scent of serenity. It tells the deepest, most primal parts of our being that the world is well, that the environment is lush, and that the earth is breathing. It is a fragrance that anchors us to the present moment, wrapping us in a heavy, comforting blanket of damp soil and ancient green life. Let this imagined aroma fill your mind, a soft, invisible cloud that carries no urgency and no demands. It is simply the breath of the world, exhaling slowly in the quiet hours. As the scent lingers in your thoughts, you might feel yourself sinking a little deeper into your pillow, your limbs feeling as heavy and peaceful as a stone resting in a bed of velvet. We are part of this cycle, connected to the moss and the rain by a bond that is millions of years old. In this space, the air is always cool, the ground is always soft, and the scent of the earth is a lullaby that guides us toward a rest as deep and enduring as the forest itself. As the perfume of the forest begins to settle into the corners of your mind, let us hold a final thought for this miniature giant. We have spent this time together shrinking our world, looking closer at the emerald threads that weave through the shadows. And in doing so, we have discovered a history more vast than any mountain range. The moss is a testament to the beauty of the small, a living bridge between the very first breath of terrestrial life and the quiet moment you are sharing with the world right now. Think of the resilience held within those one-cell thick leaves. Over hundreds of millions of years, the moss has endured what many larger, more complex beings could not. It has survived 5 mass extinctions, those great slow turnings of the Earth's history where the balance of life shifted entirely. Through every change, through every shift in the atmosphere and every cooling of the sun, the moss remained. It tucked itself into the crevices of rocks and the bark of ancient trees, waiting with a patience that only the very old can truly understand. It did not need to grow tall to survive. It only needed to remain soft and persistent. In its quietude, the moss offers us a lesson in how to live. It is the ultimate model of a sustainable life, a low-impact existence that leaves the world better than it found it. It asks for no chemical fertilizers to turn its deep, rich green. It needs no machines to groom it, no human hand to guide its growth or maintain its boundaries. It is content to simply be, absorbing the moisture from the morning fog and the nutrients from the dust that settles gently upon it. It gives us oxygen, it cools the ground, it stores the carbon of the world, and it asks for nothing in return but the chance to keep its soft, velvet watch over the forest floor. And we can look at a patch of moss and see a mirror of what it means to be truly settled. It does not strive to be the tallest in the woods. It does not compete for the brightest light. Instead, it finds perfection in the shadows, flourishing in the spaces others have overlooked. This is the scientific thank you we offer to the bryophytes, a gratitude for their role as the first pioneers of the land, for their work in building the very soil we walk upon, and for the way they continue to protect the delicate balance of our ecosystem today. As we recognize the moss as a miniature giant, we begin to realize that its strength lies in its softness. It is a cushion for the world, a green sanctuary that hums with a silent, ancient vitality. We are fortunate to share our planet with such a steady, peaceful presence. Let the weight of this knowledge settle over you like the moss itself, heavy, cool, and incredibly kind. You are resting in a world that has been carefully tended by these green guardians for eons, and their resilience is a promise that the earth continues to turn slowly and surely, even as you drift toward the deep stillness of the night. The light between the branches is softening now, turning from a pale gold to a deep velvety violet. The forest is exhaling a long, slow breath that carries the scent of damp earth and ancient stone. As the shadows stretch long across the moss, feel yourself being nestled into that same green carpet we have explored together. It is no longer just a subject of study. It is a sanctuary. Imagine the moss rising up ever so slightly to meet you, its millions of tiny water-filled cells acting as a living cushion, supporting you with a gentle, springy pressure that requires nothing from you. As you settle deeper into your blankets, your mind begins its own quiet transition. It is a beautiful reality of our biology that the brain continues to process and organize information most effectively during these initial stages of sleep. All the details we have shared, the way the moss drinks through its leaves, the tiny water bears navigating the green valleys, the history of a world before flowers, these are not lost. They are being woven into the fabric of your memory, becoming a part of the calm landscape of your subconscious. You are learning even as you let go. The rhythm of my voice is here to guide that transition. Science tells us that the sound of a calm, steady narration can actively lower the cortisol in our systems, gently nudging the body away from the busyness of the day and toward the restorative stillness of the night. You are in a safe space, a shared space, where the only requirement is to exist. The moss does not hurry to grow, and you do not need to hurry to sleep. It will happen as naturally as the dew forming on a leaf. The forest is very quiet now. The wind has fallen away, leaving only the softest rustle of a single leaf or the distant muffled sound of a stream. The moss remains, a vast and silent lung breathing for the world. It is there in the darkness, holding the moisture, guarding the soil, and keeping its ancient vigil. You are part of this rhythm now. You are tucked into the cradle of the earth, surrounded by the resilience of the bryophytes and the peace of the understory. Let the weight of your limbs sink into the softness. Let the thoughts of the day dissolve like a mist in the morning sun. There is only the cool air, the soft ground, and the deep, nourishing dark. The world is at rest, and you are resting with it. The forest remains, breathing quietly in the dark, watching over you as you drift away. Down into the green, down into the velvet, down into sleep. Good night. Sleep well.